Welcome to another episode of Leno's Garage. This time we're in the Mercedes-Benz section of my garage, and what I have here is my favorite kind of car, the original and unrestored. This here is the very first car that was built by Carl Benz, and which basically marked the starting point of the company as a very successful one in the world anyway. But this here, as you can see, I don't know if you can zoom in there. Today we don't have a cameraman here. I spent my last penny here at the Pebble Beach Country Club. But as you can see, it's a beautifully handcrafted car, three-wheeler, and this here is pretty much an environmental disaster on the road. Just don't get caught trying to drive this thing down any street, especially here in sunny California. Now, this here is driving at its most exposed. You can see every little bit here, and as you can see, there's a lot of copper, a lot of brass, all these goodies that you don't even find nowadays anymore because the Chinese bought off the copper market, let's face it. So what you do is back then that before you hand crack thing, what you got is this huge enormous flywheel, which also acts as the starter. So you have your gas tank here, you have your oiler right here, and then you have this big humongous cylinder that just goes chugging along, chuck, 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 chuck. And point this out, there are no brakes. What you have here, well, no gas pedal anyway. What you have is a brake that is also the regulator. So other than that, it just has one steady speed. Beautiful car. Since I've put on a lot of weight lately, we're not going to take it for a spin. But nevertheless, if you want to look up the history of the car, very interesting history. This was driven by Carl Benz's wife, of all people. And back in the olden days when Carl Benz finished this car, he wasn't even allowed to drive it on the road. He was stopped by the police and everything. I guess after about 130 years later, not much has changed. So it was up to his wife to prove that this was actually a roadworthy, economically viable vehicle. And so in a kind of cloak and dagger operation, she took the car, took the kids, without telling her husband Carl what happened in the meantime, and drove it to the nearby town, only to prove that this was indeed a vehicle that can be driven from A to B without any major interference. Speaking of interference, you have your drivetrain here, you have the kind of bicycle wheel configuration. It's very crude, but it still served its purpose back in the olden days. You have your box here. They've put in a kind of modern generator, substituting what they probably had back in the olden days, maybe some sort of alkaline, we don't know. And other than that, oh yeah, and this is really trick. The steering wheel right here. This is just this little bar that you activate with your hands. Duh. Fascinating vehicle. So, I guess that concludes today's episode of Leno's Garage, and happy motoring, everybody.